we're going to talk about the tax hike, the 10% plus tax hike, which is getting very strong opposition from a lot of leaders in the Japanese government, as well as people here in Japan. Now, it's been pretty heavy with the current majority party, the Democratic Party of Japan, and their push to get this tax hike to go through. End of March, which was the end of the fiscal year for Japan, they tried to push a vote through. They closed discussion within their own party, which they had a lot of opposition within their own party for this tax hike. They closed discussion and attempted to force a vote. So the tax hike could be included in the upcoming budget, which also had to be approved in the end of March. Now, of course, the opposition parties, most notably the former majority party, the Liberal Democratic Party of Japan, was extremely against pushing a vote on the Diet floor. They rose a big stink, and the vote essentially didn't amount to much of anything. But that hasn't stopped the majority party from continuing to attempt to push this through. Prime Minister Noda has announced that he will, the next day or two, formally ask opposition leaders to engage in discussions once again. Now, the opposition leaders are not interested in discussing this anymore with the majority party. They're against it. They've had discussion in the past. The majority party will not compromise. The majority party will not work out proper deals for any kind of overall sweeping tax hike. This was expressed very clearly, probably the best way, by the the leader of the new Komito party, who said it's unnecessary for us to continue to have ceremonial talks on this issue, which says to me that basically they don't really have much faith that anything really is going to get done by talking to the majority party on this. The majority party is sticking to its guns. They said, this is what we want. We want your cooperation. Now, the word cooperation in Japan, both in politics and business, effectively means do it my way. It doesn't mean let's work together to make the best deal. It doesn't mean let's compromise and we both get a little bit of what we want. No. When you hear anyone use the word cooperation, it's a code word for, come on, do it our way. So that's probably one of the driving factors why the opposition leaders and opposition parties are not willing to talk about this anymore, due to the majority party's attitude towards the tax hike. They want it, and they feel everyone in the government should support it. They don't have another alternative. It's tax hike or nothing. They don't want to look at possibly shifting the tax code around to more effectively tax people who could handle the extra tax burden. They don't want to discuss changes in regulatory policy, in the financial markets, to get the revenue that way. No. The only thing they want, and the only thing they'll talk about, is increasing the consumer tax. Now, we all know who the consumer tax affects the most. That is, of course, the people. People like me, people like my Japanese coworkers, the guy that gets a coffee and donut on his way to work, the guy having a beer after work, the mother going to the supermarket to buy food for her family. Yeah, the tax hike affects those people. People who are extremely wealthy, people who are in the financial industry, they're not affected by it as much as the everyday citizen. You're Joe Sixpack. All right? And that's probably why the opposition party is so against this, because they know that is suicide politically to tax that segment of the population 10% and possibly higher. You want to not get elected in Japan? It takes a lot. It takes a lot for an incumbent to get routed, but that would do it, for sure. You go after people like that and you tax them like that, you'd see some leadership change. So these opposition leaders are fully aware of that, and they're not going to support it. Not unless some compromises are made, not unless some deals are cut. And of course, you know me, with my libertarian sensibilities, I'm totally against this. Totally think this is not necessary. Again, this is just victimizing people even more with all the problems we're having in Japan right now about increasing the consumption tax and the consumer tax. Bad idea overall. I'm totally with the opposition leadership on this one. The Liberal Democratic Party, which can't we have actually agreement with them on something? And of course, the other major opposition party, the new Komeito, which I mentioned, the opposition leader of that party, his comments earlier. So what would be better? You know, what is the other option? Okay. What we could do, instead of raising the consumption tax and the consumer tax to help pay for relief efforts, you need to encourage the private sector to pick up the slack on cleanup efforts, relief efforts, rebuilding efforts. It doesn't help the market grow or the economy grow, of course, because all that extra construction and job growth and everything will be just recuperating what the market and the economy lost due to the disaster. But it'll be a nice boost. So you encourage growth through that way. And you collect taxes as normal, through normal business. And when you see that jump up, they'll be able to get the revenue that they're looking for. They're letting the market do what the market does best, and let business do what business does best. You know, you keep a close eye on these guys, because it is relief efforts and all. But it's best to try to encourage business to take advantage of the disaster through construction, rebuilding, cleanup efforts. They can make money at it. They know what they're doing. They know how to do this. Landowners got money. They've been suffering a lot, and the more you displace them, the lower their funds go, the harder it is for them to pay into the private sector to rebuild things. So the longer you wait, the worse it's going to be. And the harder it is going to be to kickstart the economy. So here's a wonderful opportunity. Instead of raising the tax, you turn the relief efforts more over to the private sector, and you find businesses who are interested in doing this and feel they can make a profit at it, and let them have at it. Alright, so that's all we have to say on this one. Tax hike, bad idea. Opposition party in Japan, having none of it.